Hello and welcome to this next edition of the Transit Museum Society vlog. My name is Michael Taylor Noonan and I'm the Vice President of the Society. And in this edition, we're going to focus on signs. Now, a lot of the donations we get are things like transfers, tickets, schedules, buzzers. Occasionally we get items like this. I'm not sure how the person got it because these belong on the side of a bus and they would have been screwed into the bus. Anyway, but you probably don't recognize these because these signs only existed on buses for a very short period of time in the 1970s. Up until 1973, responsibility for planning and operating buses in places like Vancouver, Victoria, Richmond, Burnaby, North Van was the preserve of BC Hydro. But in 1973, the incoming BC NDP government decided to set up a government department named the Bureau of Transit Services. It would be their job to plan the service and BC Hydro would just operate it. One of the first initiatives of the Bureau of Transit Services was to brand the bus services. Up until then, they just had the BC Hydro logo on. What they came up with was bus branding. And they divided services up into 3 distinct fleets. They were all called bus, and those services in places like Vancouver and Burnaby would be just called bus, and they would have a yellow and orange stripe along them. One of the promises or election pledges of the NDP government was to introduce transit service into places like Surrey and Coquitlam. And they decided that they would run express buses from Vancouver downtown to these areas. And these buses would be limited stop and they would be branded FASTBUS. And they would have, instead of the yellow and orange stripe, they would have a orange and brown stripe. The third and final fleet was Pacific Stage Lines. They would have the same bus logo, but they would be called Town and Country and would feature a stripe which was 2 shades of green. So here we have a Flyer D800 in the new livery. You can see the orange and yellow stripes and the bus sign signifying that this bus was in service probably on the night McDonald's in local Vancouver service. So the first buses to wear the livery were these Flyer D700s. Now originally they were delivered in early 1973 and they came in plain white, and then the bus branding was applied after its introduction by the UTA. And you can see that this bus also has the bus sign on the side. In this shot, you have 2 of the new coaches. You have the Flyer D700 with local service in yellow and orange, and beside it is one of the new coaches that were delivered for GM, especially for FASTBUS service. Now, because this bus is a 5900, it would be operating out of Kensington and would have maybe operated to Lougheed Mall as a 933. Again, this is a FASTBUS operating from Burnaby. Here's another GM coach operating out of Burnaby in the brown and orange stripes. Now this is an interesting shot because they've actually cut out the bus sign. Now I suspect that this was one of the first incarnations of the sign and they probably realized it was too expensive to manufacture for the whole fleet. In 1976, with the change of government, responsibility for planning transit service was given back to BC Hydro. And I don't know why BC Hydro was against this system, but that is one of the first things they did, was to eliminate all the branding. They did keep the idea of the two stripes and going into an orange and dark brown stripe. So buses that were previously in the yellow and orange began to be repainted into this orange and brown.
Now, talking about signs, here we have the side sign from one of those buses. It would have been a GM because it would have been a FASTBUS. And these are the signs that they would have printed for the introduction of the service in Coquitlam. Haney Town Centre is interesting because it never got to Haney Town Centre, but I guess they were planning for the future. And so here we have the bus routes in Port Coquitlam: Eastern Drive or Mary Hill, Greenmount, which is the Prairie, Port Coquitlam City Hall, Cedar, which is also Prairie, downtown Vancouver, Lougheed Mall, which was one of the two focal points of the transit system. The other one was Poirier and Foster. Interesting thing about this transfer point was that for some reason the various parties involved managed to mistakenly build it too small for buses. So it was never used as a full transit loop, merely on street stops. Well, there you have it. I hope you found that video interesting. At the Transit Museum Society, we have a lot of interesting subjects which we're going to present to you over the coming weeks. So please remember to check out our website.